Alrighty, so we're just 2 days away from MLS Cup 2023 between the Columbus Crew and LAFC, and I thought this is the time to start making video about MLS Cup 2023. Starting off with looking at how the Columbus Crew is able to get to MLS Cup, and later on I'll do a video similar to LAFC. And what's kind of interesting the Columbus Crew is that this is the second time in the last 4 years that they have made it into this stage, and will be the second time that they will host MLS Cup in the last four season two. Now, obviously, I don't want to throw the D word in there, meaning the dynasty word about this team. I mean, they need to win this one and maybe win another one that you can truly consider to for them to be a dynasty, similar to what some people have thrown that word with the Seattle Sounders when they were dominating, and even with Toronto FC when they were dominating the league. But that being said, what's kind of interesting about this year's Columbus Crew team compared to the 2020 team is that this is easily the most entertaining team in the league, and that I thought Wilfred Nancy when he decided to come to the Columbus Crew, that was probably one of the biggest non-player acquisition that turns out to be a huge hit for a team hit in MLS history, because we saw what Wilfred Nancy did with Montreal on a shoestring budget. Now that he's able to get the resources and the player to do so, it's going to be even more exciting to see how he's going to do, and he's shown it. I mean, the tactics that he's been using has provided some of the most entertaining game you can imagine, and it's not just Crew fans that enjoy it. I really enjoy watching Columbus Crew game, especially down the latter part of the season where you usually see these high scoring kind of affair. And the style that Wilfred Nancy play, although I know the style that he plays could be a little bit too much if he does run into a counter attacking team, because his team loves to throw men forward and you get exposed in the counter attack. They don't care. They're gonna stick to the style, and it's been proven that, yeah, we're still able to outscore opponent and able to fought them too, which again, that is something that you don't usually see happen in the playoffs. In the playoffs, it's not about outscoring an opponent. It's kind of a battle of nutrition, especially when you look at the Eastern Conference this season. How I thought it was going to be just a dogfight in terms of who's going to be representing the East in MLS Cup. And while I thought Columbus were one of the teams that were favorites to get out of that at the top of the mountain and be that team that represent MLS Cup in the East, I didn't think they were the favorites. I thought there were teams that are above them that you could say that they were the favorites coming out of the East in that bloodbath that we were going to see in the playoffs. But starting off all the way back into the beginning of the regular season, it did not get off to a good start for the Columbus Crew. They actually lost 4-1 in the first game under charge of Wilfred Nancy. So yeah, it definitely took a while for Wilfred Nancy to implement his philosophy, though they did rebound with a 2-0 win against DC, but then they had a 1-1 draw against Toronto on the road. Keep in mind, this Columbus team, despite the fact that, we talk about how they have played this entertaining soccer bread under Wilfred Nancy, the problem for the Columbus Crew this season is still their role form. And while it definitely got better near the end of the season, which was a huge key of why they were able to go deep and eventually represent the East in MLS Cup, it was still a problem in the beginning of the season, even in the middle of the season. And you kind of see that, the style that Wilfred Nancy had play doesn't really quite worked out on the roads so much. But in the next game, they did lose 2-1 to the New York Red Bulls. But then in March 25th against Atlanta United, this is when you started to see the Wilfred Nancy ball started to be in full effect. They won 6-1 against Atlanta United, followed by a 4-0 win against RSL in that one. And then they go on the road and they did win 2-0 against DC United. Again, I said about their struggle on the road, but they have won a couple of road games there and there. But then this is where the struggle really begins for this Columbus team. I mean, we talk about every MLS team always tends to have to face a period and adversity. I think this was kind of the time when they started to face some adversity between the month of April all the way to near the end of May, because they drew 1-1 against New England. That's not bad, but then they lost 1-0 on the road against Charlotte. Now they did rebound in the U.S. Open Cup, winning 1-0 against Indy 11, but they did lose 2-1 at home against Inter Miami. And mind you, that was an Inter Miami team that have not won a single game coming in, so that was definitely a devastating loss, but they rebounded in the U.S. Open Cup again, winning 5-1 against Loudoun United. Then they had a 2-2 draw against Orlando City. That was a game that they should have won because they were 2-0 up, and they let Orlando back into it and salvage a point. They did win 2-0 against the Galaxy, but that was actually the only win that they had in league play out of the spell between April 15 all the way to April 28th, because after that they lost the Hell is Real Derby 3-2 against FC Cincinnati, and to make matters worse, they got knocked out in the U.S. Open Cup round of 16. They lost 1-0 against Pittsburgh Riverhound, and mind you, Pittsburgh was definitely a good team in the USL Championship, but yeah, knowing the fact that the Crew were doing well and are able to always find a response in the U.S. Open Cup after a tough league loss, that was kind of a little bit surprising, and it also doesn't help that in the following game they lost 3-1 to Nashville SC, and this is where things kind of looked doom and gloom early on for this Columbus Crew team, where they are really struggling during this time. I think they were just above the red line up to this point. But then the calendar turned to June, and this is where Columbus started to prosper again. They won 3-2 against the Colorado Rapids. I mean, I think that if there is a time where Columbus really need to get a win and need to face against Colorado, this is the time to do so. And again, this is no disrespect to the Colorado Rapids, but up until this point, the Colorado Rapids were an awful team, and were a team that was just giving points for free. So Columbus desperately needed because of how bad things were going in league play. And then they followed that with a 4-2 win against Charlotte FC. Again, this is where you started to see the high flying kind of Columbus team and the high flying Wilfred Nancy ball starting to in place, where there's going to be some high scoring, even though yes, they have given up some goals, but all that has to do with that's kind of the style that this Crew team has played. And then they followed that with a 2-1 road win against the Chicago Fire, but then they did drew 1-1 against NYCFC. They won 2-0 against Nashville, and then won 2-1 against the New York Red Bulls. They did drew 2-2 against Inter Miami, and then drew 1-1 against NYCFC, and then they did lose 3-2 against the Portland Timbers. So they had a relatively good spell in the month of June, but then when July hits, that's when things kind of got a little bit wonky again. But when we head to the league cup play, at least in the group stage, that's when things kind of got rebounded again, because in the Leagues Cup play against a really tough St. Louis City team, they won 2-1 in that one. And then this is probably one of the most impressive victory that we've seen an MLS team have done against a Liga MX team. A 4-1 victory against Club America. And mind you, this was a Club America team that was fresh off of a 4-0 beatdown against St. Louis. And that was a Club America team. When I watched them play, they were playing Man City level kind of style of soccer against St. Louis. They absolutely dominate St. Louis off the pitch, and that I thought Columbus was going to be really up against it against this really good Club America team, especially with the way that Columbus is a team with questionable defensive play. Are they going to stand up with the task of Club America? Well, turns out they did exactly that. They really punched them in the mouth to a point where, yeah, it was definitely a statement win, and just kind of a humiliation loss for Liga MX to see their biggest club in their team, their most prestige club in their team, lose that. Then we go to the round of 32, and in the round of 32, when they play Minnesota United, well, it was an entertaining game too. It was a free draw at the end, but unfortunately they did lose in the PK shootout and got knocked out in the round 32. And it's such a shame too, because that was such an entertaining game, but in the knockout round, somebody's gonna have to win, and unfortunately Columbus come on the wrong stick of that PK shootout against Minnesota. But when they got back to league play, they got back where they picked up. They won 3-0 against FC Cincinnati, win 2-0 against Toronto FC. They did lose 2-0 on the road against Houston, but that's expected because Houston is a team that is very good on the road, and not to mention it was a short week too. But they did follow that with a 4-2 road win against Montreal, but then they lost 4-3 against Orlando City. And again, Orlando is kind of a team that I will say later on they finally solved them, but they could have easily won both of those matchup in the regular season too. They had a 3-1 lead in that one. That was easily one of the more painful losses that Will Nancy and this Columbus Crew team suffered this season. But fortunately, they did bounce back the next week by winning 3-0 against the Chicago Fire. They drew 1-1 against Dallas, drew 1-1 against the Philadelphia Union, won 2-1 against New England, drew 1-1 against Atlanta, and then win 2-1 against Montreal. So hey, they kind of got off to a decent finish to the season. I mean, they finished the season 6 game unbeaten. Mind you, yes, half of those games were draws, but this team was definitely heading into the playoffs in the right direction, and that's kind of what you need. You do not want to head into the playoffs cold and on a losing streak. And heading into the first round matchup, this was definitely billed as a heavyweight matchup between Columbus and Atlanta because both of these teams play very entertaining style of soccer, and I was expecting there was going to be a lot of goals that was happening. It was at least not in game one though. In game one, it was a total domination that Columbus had against Atlanta, a 2-0 win. But then they did lose 4-2 on the road against Atlanta before flipping that score in their favor in the decisive game three to move on into the conference semifinal. Now in the conference semifinal against Orlando City, they really dominate that game. And I even said that, in some way, if they were a little bit better in terms of their finishing, they probably would have won it in regular time. But they did win 2-0 in that game against Orlando City, which set up the Hell is Real derby that we saw in the final and in the conference final, that is. And despite the fact that they were 2-0 down in this one, uh the spirit of Columbus Crew definitely was exercised in this one. I mean, as much as I know Columbus has been a team that has known to blow leads there in there because even though Wilfred Nancy has definitely stopped that kind of narrative of them blowing leads left and right, like what we saw last season under Caleb Porter. They've also been a team that has known to have a comeback, and this was definitely a comeback and a half against the Cincinnati team in a game where I thought they were actually the better team in that game. Like, despite the fact that they were 2-0 down, they were the better team in that game, and they able to eventually make that pressure off. And once they come back from a 2-0 deficit to tie it at 2-2, I think everybody knew that FC Cincinnati was in trouble and Columbus was going to get the win, and they did exactly that in extra time to make it into the final. So yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how they do in the final against LAFC, and especially I'll talk about this again when I do the LAFC version of this video, and kind of maybe just a little bit of a teaser in terms of what I'll talk about in the preview. I think this should be a very entertaining MLS Cup, and especially I think there's no doubt that Wilfred Nancy will stick to the style that he has. I mean, he's been running this style for the whole time, even against an LAFC team that we know that they like to counterattack, and they're very lethal on the transition. They don't care. They're gonna have most of the possession. They're gonna try to create numerous chances as they have done throughout this playoffs, and that they're just kind of live or die by this tactics. And that's where I of course will talk about how LAFC maybe that can actually play in their hands, knowing the fact that that's kind of what they need to do. Like throughout this playoffs and even throughout the season, they have been known as a more of a transitional kind of team. And knowing Columbus is a team that has struggled in terms of dealing with transition because they put so many men for it, since they love to dictate possession. That's going to be interesting to see how that's going to go out. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video, and what do you think of the journey for the Columbus Crew reaching MLS Cup for the second time in the last 4 seasons, and we'll also host at the MLS Cup for the second time in the last 4 seasons too, because the 2020 COVID shortened season, although they didn't had a lot of fans in the stands in this one, and this is obviously for Crew fans, they're probably very happy the fact that they're going to have fans back in the stands, especially playing at a new stadium too. This is going to be the first one that's going to be played at Lower Dock Field after the 2020 version was playing in the old Columbus Crew Stadium. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.